I don't know how I've managed to set that up, but it tells us that it's being recorded. Anyway, so good morning, everybody. So for those of you that don't know me, I am Sally, and I'm joined here this morning by my colleagues Catherine and Jackie, who you'll be pleased to hear are going to be doing the majority of the chatting this morning, so you don't have to listen to me. So just a little bit of housekeeping. The session is recorded, so if you want to share it with colleagues, then you're very welcome to, and it's also being recorded for the benefit of those who have registered and haven't been able to make it this morning, so they can watch it back at another time. If you've got any questions, then please do use the chat box, and if you just pop in panelists and attendees, then everybody can see the questions that you're asking and the comments that you're making, and Catherine and Jackie will answer them as we go through this morning's session. So without further ado, I am going to mute myself and hand you over to Jackie, who's going to start talking us through this month's Much Loved modules, and we're focusing all on internal promotion. So over to you, Jackie.
Thanks, Sally, and welcome everybody. And I'm so glad that the sun is shining in quite a lot of places where you are. It's due to be very warm next week, so yippee. So what we're going to cover today. So the purpose of the session is to give you tools, tips and suggestions for the internal promotion of your tribute scheme. But we also want to provide an opportunity for discussion and questions. So use your chat box, any experiences, tips, ideas, anything like that, just pop in that chat box, because it's a great platform, this is, so that we can all share what's working well and what you've tried and what perhaps you wouldn't want to try again. So who needs to know? Right, so it's crucial to promote your tribute scheme to everyone connected to working within your charity, not just those colleagues that you may think come in touch with bereaved supporters. It really is important that they connect with everybody. So identifying your internal audience. So we've got a little list here that we've thought of ourselves, but actually your charity is unique. You're going to have lots of different touch points, lots of different places where supporters may speak to a different colleague. So just to pick out a couple of ideas here, supporter care. If you're lucky enough that you have got a supporter care team, and typically these are your colleagues that may be speaking to in-mem donors, bereaved families. If your supporter care team know about your tribute scheme, when they're talking to a bereaved supporter, actually that's an opportunity. I don't like to use the word cross-sell, but it's the opportunity to promote your scheme. So if your supporter care team know that you have a tribute scheme in the first place, they'll be feeling very comfortable when talking about a bereavement tool, i.e. your tribute fund scheme. So reception areas, you might get supporters come in and leave donations in memory of someone. Actually, your receptionists, if they were aware that you've got a tribute scheme, said, did you know, you can set up a tribute scheme. There's lots of different touch points, so they'll all be unique to your charity or organisation. So have a think of where else, not just the obvious ones. So why do you need to tell your colleagues? Do they even know what a tribute scheme is? So what I did as a little test is I would say to my family, like my husband, you might want to use your mum and dad, a cross-section of different age groups, ask them what a tribute is, and interestingly, see what language and what terminology they use when they explain tributes, because it's that type of language and how they sort of think what a tribute is that might be useful when you're trying to explain internally at a level that everybody understands. But it's also great to get their buy-in and enthusiasm. If they really know that your charity are offering a bereavement tool that's really, really going to help their supporters, they'll be really wanting to tell everybody about it, and try and get some enthusiasm, something you are offering, but they can only do that if they know about it. and help share the workload of promoting your tributes to supporters and the wider audience. And I don't just mean internally, but externally as well. So it carries on going. Right, so now we're going to pop over to Catherine, who's going to talk about the communication aspect of internal communication. Over to you, Catherine.
That's great. Thanks so much, Sally. Sorry, Jackie. God, I'm going mad now. Thanks, Jackie. That's great. And I think Jackie's just identified there, the importance of who your internal audience is and sort of letting them know about your tribute scheme. So what I'm going to run through with you is some ideas and tips of how you actually do this, starting with communication, when and how. So it says here, set yourself an internal time plan. So quite similarly to how you might have a supported journey for your external supporters, a time plan for them, maybe think of creating something similar for your colleagues. So you can give them bite-sized pieces and regularly. So don't overwhelm them and try and give them all the information just in one hit and get it over and done with. Keep it as a drip feed. So, you can really sort of highlight some of the features and keep it really interesting and engaging. So it's also really understandable as well about what one is. So you could sort of highlight one time, maybe the photos, the virtual gifts, or even the events functionality on the tributes. Another time you might sort of let them know some stats. Look how much, this one's raised, or look how many candles this one's got, or sort of just really making it really positive, really interesting, and really engaging as well. And then when I put here recognition and thanks, so like you'd thank your supporters for their efforts and, with the tribute scheme, actually, if you've got somebody like Jackie said in the reception area who has, promoted the tributes scheme that you have, actually thank them for that, for promoting it, and also giving them the recognition and showing them how the tributes are getting on. So keep them involved and keeping them engaged. So what to tell them? We often have said this before in previous modules, the WWW. So what, where, and who. So what is a tribute? So, make sure the language, as Jackie's mentioned before, is really understandable. So maybe it's an online space to remember, or it's like a mini website where people can remember their loved ones. Really make sure that the terminology of explaining what a tribute is to your colleagues is understandable. So don't just presume, just because you talk about tributes all the time, that they know what one is. And to do this, what a really nice idea might be to share an example of one as well. Then where they find it. So they find the details on your website, or maybe you have a leaflet. Just make sure that the signposting is really clear, so they know where on your website to find the tribute information, so they can equally share this with external colleagues as well, or external audiences. So if they're also if you're promoting internally and your colleagues are then going to talk to their people, their touch points, then actually they have a really clear understanding of where the tributes are on the website. They can signpost people to it, or where the leaflets are in reception, anything like that. So make sure they know where to find more information on the tribute scheme that you have. And then the last one here on what to tell them is who. Who is it in your organization who's championing the scheme? Is it you? So if it is, then make sure that they have your contact details, your number, that they know how to get hold of you, or if you're not there, who to contact. So is it your fundraising team? Is it your support care team? Is it just you championing it all? Just making sure they know who to contact and how to get hold of you. So highlighting the benefits. I mean, to be honest, we can't get everything on here. There are so many benefits, and it's difficult to list them all. And I'm sure so many of you have know so many different benefits that you can have, that the tribute has for your organization. So I've highlighted a few here. So obviously outcomes for the charity, you're benefiting the outcome for the charity. So as a charity, it's really great that you're able to offer support to your families. It is a bereavement tool. Keep that foremost in your, in the front of your mind. Then actually you're offering those families that support. You're also able to use the tributes to engage with your supporters and build those lasting relationships. So that's a really great benefit of the charity, for the charity, to have that engagement, to have that relationship with your supporters. Some of the other outcomes that you might highlight to your colleagues is the funding as well. So, you know, depending on which team, you'll obviously sort of highlight the benefits differently too, but actually highlighting that tributes do generate income when people do the fundraising. And actually, if you put into tangible, you know, show them a tangible result of that, i.e. this amount of money that we raised through the tribute funds last year managed to pay for this part of a maybe research project or a sensory room, or paid for X amount of nurse hours for the year and things like that. So really highlight the outcomes for the charity, and then outcomes for the supporter. So for the supporter, it's a bereavement space. And I think this, you know, not being able to see people in this last year, you know, having something that's online where people can leave messages of condolences, where they can add virtual gifts, a space to remember their loved ones. So really highlight the outcomes for the supporters as well. So it does offer a bereavement support and so much comfort for the families as well. And often people want to carry on and be engaged with that charity that's meant so much to them, you know, over a short period of time, or maybe over years. So it really does give that connection to those supporters. So as I say, there are so many benefits, and they're vast throughout different charities as well. So just make sure that you highlight that to your internal colleagues as well, so they can really see the benefit as a whole package. So ways to do this, there are lots of ways to internally promote and share your tribute scheme. I mean, there's a huge list, and here I've just put a few examples down, all of which that you could put into that time plan. So, you know, earlier on I mentioned that you create a time plan of, you know, what you're going to drip feed and how you're going to drip feed the communication to your internal audience. But actually you could use lots of these. So I think I'm just going to highlight a couple of them. I mean, the induction training. So anybody who joins your organization or your charity, if you include tributes within the induction training, then you're embedding it from the offset, you're explaining what it is, and right from the beginning they're already used to knowing what tributes are, they understand how they work, and then that will be ingrained and hopefully be able to carry through in the work that they do. I'm also going to pick up on a short video. So, you know, a short video might seem a little bit overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. There's free software out there to do that. A really short video, and that video might be that you're in, maybe you interview a tribute guardian and they explain, you know, what their tributes meant to them, or maybe yourself just explaining what the tributes scheme is. We even have them on the Much Loved homepage. We've got our own 3-minute short video where we've interviewed 3 people, 3 tribute guardians, and it's sort of demonstrated, and they've explained what their tribute has meant to them. You're welcome to use that video and share that out as part of the drip feed. So kind of make yourself a list of all the different things and think about the ways that you can communicate that's engaging, you know, and it really has the buy-in. And I think the other thing as well is just make sure that yourself, you really understand the benefit and you really love the tributes yourself, so that you then, when you do communicate, that enthusiasm will obviously sort of pass through as well. So take some time. I think what I often do at Much Loved actually is I spend a lot of time sort of speaking to charities, how they can promote the tributes. But when I actually sit down and really look at the tributes themselves, that's when I think these things are amazing. Do you know what I mean? And really get that sort of buy-in of why we're doing this and what it really brings to the families and people. So now I'm going to pass it back to Jackie. So she's going to talk through now the next part.
That's great, thanks Catherine. Just before I do, Becky Clark has just put in the chat box about, do we have any examples of the time plans that Catherine's suggesting? So if anybody does already use some sort of planning for internal comms, if they're happy to share it, that would be great. Let us know, or let Becky know. That would be absolutely great. So just going back to internal promotion, if you're on extended leave, and I'm speaking from experience here, or you're on annual leave, it's great if you can have a backup. Who they're going to speak to, a supporter, if you're away, if no colleagues know about your tribute scheme, you're not going to look very joined up. So it's always good if you can to get your colleagues involved. You know, do they know how to set up a tribute? If you could go through a supporter journey with them, you know, if they are ever find themselves in a position when they're speaking to a supporter, they'll be able to resonate with that journey, and they'll know exactly what the questions are that the supporters asking, as you are all aware, it takes 2 minutes to create the tribute, so it's nothing too arduous, and it's a great way to engage again with your colleagues, to show them, you know, just how helpful this bereavement tool is. Don't forget as well, you might be the only login, but you can have multiple logins in your partner area. So your data team, your finance team, anybody you want. So just let us know who you want added to your partner area, so they can access your partner area for the bits of information that they need. Use the alerts, so that, you know, you might have an alert where a new tribute set up, where a new donation has been made to a tribute. Highlight this functionality to your colleagues as well. That'll create a bit of excitement. If they can see that a tribute's attracting lots of donations, they might want to look into it to see, you know, are these family doing an event? It just helps keep the connection and keep them engaged with your tribute scheme. So just to summarise everything we've been chatting about, so the what, where and who, the 3 W's that Catherine was mentioning. So just be clear about your tribute scheme. When you're talking about it to your colleagues and you're trying to explain to them what it is, just be absolutely clear and concise, so that they understand it instantly, and then they'll be able to talk to their supporters confidently. So the more they understand the benefits, the happier they're going to be to promote and talk to supporters and others about your tribute scheme. So a nice little quote here: the best outcomes are from colleagues who are working independently towards one goal in unison. So just one final slide to let you know about is our additional resources. Now, I hope you're all familiar now with the charity training and support site that's found within your Manage tab of your partner area. If not, check it out, because there's so much information there, bite-sized information, stewardship information, and in fact in the stewardship area you'll find a whole section on internal communications as well. So, you know, if you want to refer back to anything or think of any quick tips, that's a good starting place. We've also got the Much Loved case study that's on the Much Loved homepage. It's a great little 3-minute video that explains tributes, and it's great for internally but also externally, but it's great to just check that out. I think we're going to pop the link into the chat box for you all as well. And now the Much Loved Google group, which actually has been looked after by one of our colleagues, Jason. You can find and add yourselves to this in the charity support site, but if Jason's on this and he'd like to add his email address, then you can contact Jason and he'll add you to the Google group, where you can actually share lots of ideas, leaflets, lots of different things. So it's great to get onto that Google groups. Now, you could speak to your account manager as well, but with all that other information, you'll probably never need to speak to us again. But if you do, we're obviously happy and we're here to help you. Okay, so I think that wraps up all our little top tips for internal comms. I'll just have a quick look in the chat box and see if there's anything else.
Actually, in the chat box earlier on, when let's just have a look. So Becky asked, do we have any examples of the time plans? I think each charity there is quite unique, but actually, and sort of coming up with your own time plan. But Becky, I'm happy to have a chat with you afterwards, but maybe some ideas on sort of maybe a lunchtime talk, or anybody's new, sort of making a sort of like getting your processes in place for stewarding your supporters, is also getting your processes in place. Pretty simple time plan of what would work for you to promote internally with intranets and things like that. So I think knowing what resources you have, if you have an intranet, you know, if there's an internal communication channel, just making sure you tap in there, maybe scheduling a few lunchtime talks if that's appropriate for your organization, and maybe sharing the Much Loved short video. So just sort of having a time plan that you think is appropriate to be able to drip feed, and making sure that you think about all those communication channels, as Jackie sort of mentioned earlier. Obviously there's, you know, it's not just your community support team and this, that and the other, it's the people on reception, it's those people out there, it's your bereavement team, your palliative care team, it's the people you see in, you know, just there in the organization who, you know, you might not have so much contact with, but everybody can know about them. So I'm just starting to chat away now. Talking about worktops in the kitchen soon.
We're not going there.
No,
Thank you very much, Jackie and Catherine. So I popped the link to the video that we've talked about in the chat box, so please do have a watch of that. Several of our charity partners do link to it on their own websites as a way to introduce tribute funds to their supporters as well, so feel free to use it. It's a really nice, short 3 minutes, and it interviews 3 fund holders and gives their kind of different experiences of using the service.
We just had a question in from Lucy here, actually, who's relatively new to Much Loved. What are the main benefits in general of good internal promotion? I think the main benefits really is just making sure that everybody knows about the tribute offering, because if you're the only person in the organization who knows about it, then obviously that ripple effect of it getting out to the wider audience, if it depends on the organization, but making sure that everybody knows just means that then you've got all these other advocates who are then championing the scheme, and you're getting more supporters involved. People can talk about it. If you've got a community team who are out there who are speaking to your what could be your in memory supporters, then actually you're offering something to your supporters, a memory space, an online page and things like that. There's lots of different benefits. So yeah, I think the internal promotion actually is one of the things that we would say here at Much Loved is key. If you've got, if it's just you who is championing the scheme and you're speaking to 5 people a day, that's 5 people who know externally. But say, for example, there's 20 people within the organisation who are speaking to 5 people a day. Obviously, that ripple effect, you're just expanding the knowledge of the tribute offering that you have.
It's also worth remembering that tribute pages are a bit of a tool in a fundraiser's toolbox, and you just never know when it might be appropriate to talk about tribute pages. So if all of your colleagues are aware of it and that it's the service that you offer, you might have somebody that pops into your shop and has a collection of donations as a result of a bereavement, and it might be appropriate to talk to them about a tribute page. So it might not always be a fundraising reason to share that information, but it might just be of a benefit to the supporter, which in turn will almost certainly end up as a fundraising benefit to yourselves. But it's a tool that your colleagues should know about and feel confident to talk about as well.
And that's quite a good point as well when you're talking to your colleagues, which language you use. So a fundraising tool is great when you've got you sit in front of your fundraising teams and they've got targets and they know that this can be an extra tool to help maybe reach those targets with your events teams. But perhaps when you're talking to your palliative care teams and everything, this is a bereavement tool. So it works both ways. So some people don't always like to think of it as a fundraising tool and they might be put off, but if you can explain that it goes across for all your supporters, so bereavement tool for the supporters, but a fundraising tool to bring in that much needed income for your charity. Adapt your sort of language when you're talking to a fundraising team meeting as to what perhaps a palliative care team meeting. It just helps them really understand the benefits of tributes.
Yeah, I'd also say it's worth familiarising yourselves with the functionality of the tribute pages, because there's so much available for families to use. So do feel free to set one up and have a play around with it and just get a sense of all the different kind of bits and pieces that your families can benefit from, because I think that kind of gives you, if you've got a really good flavour of how it can be used, and just forget about the fundraising, put that aside and look at all the other benefits that it can give, then obviously you'll feel more confident sort of talking about it to your colleagues.
So actually, Debbie's popped on something here. I think it's actually gone to all panelists rather than all panelists and attendees. So it might only be us that can see it. I'm not sure, but it's basically, Debbie's just said we had our first living tribute set up following a comment made between a patient in our daycare services and a member of the clinical team. And we went and discussed with the person who had mentioned tributes. And subsequently they set up a living tribute, and now he has sadly died, and it now is a normal tribute raising over £10,000. So this is a really lovely example where the clinical team were able to discuss with a person about the tributes. They set up a page, and the page has gone on to raise over £10,000, which you know, that's just one example of one person within a separate team with internally sort of discussing a tribute because they knew about it, they had the confidence to talk about it. So that's really lovely. Thank you, Debbie, for sharing that actually with us. That's really moving. I don't know if anybody else has any more examples, but actually it might be nice to share those you know, on our Google group or anything like that afterwards, or send it in to us and we can collate them and things like that.
Yeah, perfect. Great idea, Catherine. So thank you very much for everyone coming along this morning. We will be running these on a monthly basis. I hadn't committed to that before, but I am going to now. So the next session will be in June. Did we say the 24th? Yeah,
24th.
24th of June, and we'll be focusing on a different form of promotion, so much more about sort of external promotion, but we'll make sure that you're informed of the information of how to register for that, and eventually we'll be able to put all of that information directly on the support site, so you'll just be able to dip in and out of the sessions that are useful to you.
Debbie's put it now on the all everybody to see, so we'll just leave that for a second. If you'll look in the chat box now, Debbie's kindly shared that to everybody, and that's the story of somebody setting up a tribute, and that was part of one of her colleagues internally mentioning it because they knew about it, so that's really lovely to see.
Excellent. So thank you very much, everybody, and well, you'll see us next month. Sadly, we can't see you in this format, but I think people quite like that. But we'll see you next month. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, everybody.